Zero gravity.
Hey, what's up Space Survivors, and welcome to another Hellion developer video. Now, today we are going to start off a new Let's Play series centered around Hellion's Kessler update. There's been a lot of requests by other players, especially on the forums, for us to do this, as the game had changed a lot over the past few months. So this series aims to serve as a guide and a showcase of everything that players can expect when getting into the Kessler update, and it doesn't really matter if you're a seasoned space survivor, a veteran who is just now returning to the game, or if you are a fresh colonist waiting in his cryopod. This series is going to show something for everyone, and to do so we are going to start right off at the start, do all the recording on live servers, and make this experience as close as possible to what the new players can expect when they first start off in Hellion. Alright, so as soon as the intro finishes, you will be transported to the main menu over here. You can go into the options to adjust your controls, video, audio settings to your liking, and then you can hit play. Once you're connected to the main server, you will notice that you have the official servers and community run servers over to the left. You can also add any of these to the favorites tab if you so choose. Of course, there's also a search function to assist you if you're looking for a particular server. Now, let's pick a server. Let's go with this one. Now, this is the character creation screen. You can choose between a male and female avatar for your character, and of course, you can enter the name for your character and then hit confirm. And now you're at the starting point. So there are three options over here. As you can see, the other two are unusable at the moment. This is because Fresh Start is normally reserved exclusively for fresh characters. Continue is the option that you would use in case your character had died or you logged off and simply wish to continue playing the game. And of course, invite option will be open in case you have a friend who is playing on a server and they invite you, in which case your character will spawn inside a cryopod they prepared for you. Alright, so let's hit the fresh start, see where we end up. Alright, so we're waking up inside a cryopod. As you can see, the place is a bit claustrophobic and there's not really much we can do aside from pressing this button, which we're gonna get to in a few seconds. Alright, so a word or two about a cryochamber. So your character is basically invulnerable while inside a cryochamber, so you won't consume any resources, there is no risk of suffocation, and the other players cannot physically harm you. So it basically means that it is the only safe way to actually log out, and leave your character until you come back. Fortunately, there is a way that your character can meet his untimely demise, and that is in case your entire station is destroyed. But we're not gonna let that happen, right? Alright, so let's get out of the cryopod. Alright, we're inside our crew quarters module with a lovely view of a derelict on the outside. Well, that's interesting. Ooh, nice. Okay, so let's start off with some basic movement. So commands are pretty much simple. You can use your WASD keys to walk around. Of course, you can use control to crouch, space to jump, or left shift to sprint. You can also use the universal interaction key, which is the F key, to pick up any of the objects you come across. You can also drop them using the G key, but let's not drop garbage on the floor. We may need this actually later. Alright, so let's pick up the welding tool, and at this point I'm going to go and hit tab to open up my inventory. Now, what you can see here is that we don't actually have a suit equipped. That is because the basic cryo suit you have is simply there to help you stay in the cryo and does not have any inventory slots aside from the hand slot in which we right now are holding the welding tool. So we can only carry one item at times, or we can just hold F to swap out for another option like this medical stim pack here. Alright, let's leave it on the table, and go find ourselves a proper suit. Now, since Hellion is a survivor game, you can actually expect that a lot of things can go bad. You're in space, it's a hazardous environment. So the first priority for every new player is going to be to find a proper pressurized suit and equip it. You can also zoom by using the right mouse button. And there it is. Over in this locker, you can find your Altair Corporation's Mark 9 pressure suit. Then you have your Mark 9 jetpack, and of course the Mark 9 helmet. Always equip the suit in this order. So always equip first the suit, then the jetpack, and then finally the helmet. This is because if you hit tab, you can now see that we actually have our inventory. Now with different slots for different items. We can move away any other item, like the helmet, drop it down, put it back in, because the suit actually comes with its own inventory. Alright, now that we have the suit, we're going to go a little bit over the heads-up display that you have as part of the helmet. So in the lower left part of the screen, you can see the oxygen indicator, which is going to show basically how much oxygen is left in your suit. And of course, you have your external pressure condition monitor, which now shows us that the atmosphere within our crew quarters is perfectly breathable and we're in no risk of dying. On the other hand, over to the right, we have our jetpack fuel gauge, an indicator if it's offline or online, and the suit power. And finally, at the very bottom of the screen, we have the directional radar, which is at the moment unusable since we are on the inside. Now, one thing to note is that the suit actually does not come with its own oxygen, fuel, and power supply. These are in fact stored within the jetpack itself. So as long as the visor is closed, you will be consuming oxygen exclusively from the jetpack. So hit your H key to lift up the visor and conserve some precious oxygen. Remember that button I mentioned while we were in a cryo chamber? Well, this is it. So this kind of like a secret stash within your crew quarters module. Not so secret anymore though, but you can use it to access storage space, you know, for some. Oh, nice, 2 parts, good. We can use it, you know, to stash some valuable parts, equipment, etc. So let's pick these up because we're definitely going to need them a bit later. Now, the good thing about this is that if we go back to our cryopod over there, you can see that this one is ours. And basically what this means is this is going to serve as a respawn point and no other character can actually enter it. Oh, in case you want to go back into cryopod, just click on the glass window here. So what this means is that this stash over here, once closed, is perfectly safe. Well, unless the entire station blows up, but... Okay, so let's go over and showcase the rest of the station. The starting scene, now the starting base that you start in, consists of the crew quarters module docked to your main outpost module. So let's go over that. And here we are in zero gravity. Okay, looks like the module is a little banged up. We'll have to do some repairing, I guess. Alright, so one thing to talk about at this point is not such a bad opportunity, is about how actually motion in zero gravity works. So as you can see, I'm floating around this corridor drifting. Now the commands are pretty much similar to what you would expect. The only difference is that while you're moving forward, you will actually accelerate and not move at constant speed. So pay attention to that. The jump key is going to float you up. Control key is going to push you down. And of course, you can use the shift key to grab onto a nearby wall, you know, in case you want to stabilize yourself from rotating, etc. You can also use Q and E keys to rotate. Now you can notice that my movement is somewhat sluggish, you know, and unresponsive, so we can fix that by pressing the J key to activate a jetpack. So a jetpack is active, you can actually hear it firing. And our movements have become faster and much more responsive, albeit at the expense of fuel that the jetpack is now using. Alright, let's restore artificial gravity, so we can stop using the jetpack and wasting some fuel. Alright, this is definitely a damage. So let's go back and pick up the welding tool. Alright, so emergency gear first. So pick up the welding tool, pick up the stim pack, and of course pick up the fire extinguisher. The welder is used to repair any and all damage to your station. Fire extinguisher can be used to safely put out fires, so you can approach damaged points which are in flames. And of course, the medical stim pack is going to restore your health in case you run into any problems. To actually repair something, simply move the welding tool into your hands, approach the damaged point, which usually looks like this, and blast away. Alright, that didn't take much. Just keep in mind that the welding tool uses hydrogen as fuel, and the fire extinguisher uses nitrogen to put out flames. Alright, so now that we are in the outpost, over here, you can familiarize yourself with it. Let's see if we got any goodies. No such luck, I guess. Alright, no luck there. Now we're going to familiarize ourselves with the outpost module, which is the heart of any proper base. And the first thing on the menu is going to be the power supply system. Now, once you interact with this panel, you're going to gain access to the power supply screen. This screen is broken down into three sections. The upper one, which shows your total power output, total consumption, and of course the stored power in the capacitor in the middle. Now, since we don't have any power output at the moment, we don't have any consumption. We're at zero, which is both good and bad at the same time. On the left side, you will see the list of all the available power producing modules. So any module with any form of power producing equipment, like the solar panels in this case, is going to show up on the left, while all the power consumers are going to be shown up on the right. Now let's deploy our solar panels and actually start producing some power. Alright, so with power restored, we now have access to lights. You can notice that they lit up, and also the environmental monitors also light up. But we'll get to them in a minute. Alright, so as you can see here, we're producing 450 units of power per second, and we're consuming a total of 225, so it's kind of an even split. On the right side, you can see the base consumption of a module. In this case, the outpost consumes 100, and the crew quarters module consumes 125. Now, the base consumption is the minimum amount of power that the module needs to basically come online and actually work. If we say shut down the base consumption, we have effectively powered down the outpost. The only systems that will remain working are, of course, the solar panels, as they do not require any power to run. But let's put that on, because while the base consumption is turned offline, none of the systems within the module can be used, so air filter, air generator, and refinery would be offline. Alright, so let's move over to the life support system. Now, the life support system consists of two subsystems. We have our air generator that is regulating the pressure inside our base, and we have our air filter, which is regulating the air quality. Both of these can be turned on, but since they do not need to run at this moment, we're just going to leave them offline and allow the capacitor to charge a bit faster. And finally, you have the base overview. Now, base overview is going to show every module that you have docked to your base, and it's going to show individual rooms within it. So you can see that we have the main room within the outpost, and that it's got 1 bar of pressure and 100% air quality. Then we have corridors and various shafts, which also all are in perfect conditions. Crew quarters comes in with a hallway and a main room. This screen is also going to show you any warnings and notifications that may pop up around your base. So if in case you take damage, you suffer a collision, etc., you can go over this screen and quickly see which room exactly has the problem. All right. Now let's go over the environmental panel. So the environmental panels are scattered throughout your base. Normally each module has at least one. They show whether or not you have gravity, whether or not pressure is adequate. Pressure can go from 0, which would be full vacuum, over to 1 bar, which are normal Earth conditions, and of course air quality, which represents the mixture of the ratio basically of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that you're breathing. So as long as this stays up, you're perfectly safe. These numbers will also be completely white if everything is nominal, and if you lower your visor, you can also see the external pressure conditions, which are also in the white. Now, if at any point the ratio between the pressure and air quality drops below a point which human body can survive, these numbers are going to turn red to indicate that the atmosphere is simply unbreathable. Temperature seems to be stuck at 28 Celsius for some reason. And of course, finally, we have the hull integrity, which indicates the health of our ship or a module, which is right now at 100% because we had repaired it. All right, over here you can use this little place to store any unused stim packs. All right, so now let's cover the cargo interface, the third system that we need to go over. All right, so the cargo interaction is broken down into, once again, three sections. So over on the left, we have all modules and vessels that are currently docked to our base, and they also have, each one of them also has their own system tank. So in this case, the outpost has a tank which holds oxygen, nitrogen, and a special tank which is used to allow RCS propulsion for the module itself. Crew quarters module, on the other hand, has only a single RCS tank. Over in the middle of the screen, you can see any cargoes that are currently docked over here, since we only have one. That one is highlighted. Over here you can see its total capacity, so we are using 635 units out of 1000. And over here we can see all the resources that we currently have in store. Over to the left are the attached slot, which is currently empty since we do not have any item attached to the cargo system, and of course the refinery system. Now let's first use the opportunity to transfer some of these resources that have been so carefully left for us. You can of course use drag and drop to shift resources between the canister and the cargo, or you can just hit unload and instantly transfer all the available resources from the canister. Now let's do the same thing for the raw resource container, and I think we're gonna leave. Yeah, I think we're gonna leave the this one over here. All right. So now we're going to first check if our power supply system is producing enough power. All right, we are almost at maximum capacity. All right, so refining is basically the way how you transform raw resources like ice into usable resources, which would be hydrogen, deuterium, and oxygen. So let's drag over heavy ice to the refinery. Let's also add some heavy ice, which is also going to give us same ingredients, also with a higher chance to get deuterium, which is a reactor fuel, very important, even though we don't have an access to a reactor right now. And let's also drag in some dry ice, which is going to give us some oxygen. Once you are satisfied with what you have put in the refinery, notice that it has a limited capacity, so different refining systems have different capacities. You can just hit refine and let the refinery run its course. You also have a timer and the current power consumption. Oh, and now we come to one of the main features of the Kessler update, which would be the debris fields. It would appear that we have just entered a debris field. Alright, so debris fields are essentially large zones filled with fast-moving shrapnel, and well, I wanted to show you, but I guess I'll need to go to a window. Fast-moving shrapnel, derelicts, and basically remains of modules and space stations. Let me see if I can approach the window to show it a little better. Yes, as you can see, there is a lot of fireworks on the outside as the two modules are being bombarded by the debris. The environmental panels are also going to show any hazard that you have going on. So right now they indicate we are in the middle of a debris field. So that just means we're gonna have to move our base out of this pretty soon. Alright, so This debris field, we should be out. We're out of it. Good, good, good. Okay, so for now it seems that we're safe. Unfortunately, what had happened is that we have moved into the planetary shadow and our solar panels are not working. Now, this couldn't have happened at the worst moment since our refinery stopped midway. So, let's just shut everything down and wait for power to come back online. This is also one of the things that can happen when you're starting out. You could also start in complete shadow, but simply wait for your base to come out if you're looking for power, etc. That's what the capacitor is for, although our capacity is pretty small because this is, after all, a very basic module. Alright, so one thing that I want to go over real quickly, because it must have drawn your attention, would be the parts. Now, you can notice that I can't online anything considering that we don't have any power, but systems no longer require parts to work. This may come as a change to some of the older players. What this means is that parts now work as upgrades to the system. Now, systems on their own, without any parts, can be considered as barely operational. They consume a lot of resources, draw a lot of power, and they're generally extremely inefficient. Slotting even a tier 1 part, because parts come in tiers, will dramatically enhance the capabilities of the system in question, letting it use much less resources or produce a lot more power, improve the capacitor by a great amount, etc. So parts are essentially upgrades for your systems. And over here, for example, we'll show it up on the air filter. So air filter is going to use oxygen to improve the quality of air within your base if it drops below 90%. However, if it has carbon filters slotted in, they're going to be consumed instead of the oxygen. So essentially, without the parts, your air filter will be consuming oxygen and you will constantly be drawing resources to stay alive. However, if you have your carbon filters inserted, you basically have free air quality. Let me see if we're not out of the shadow yet. All right, looks like we'll have two things half blind. All right, another thing to mention over here is that this is actually where your air generator is located. And over here you can see the slot for the servo and the resource injector. And as I said, even basic tier 1 parts are fairly powerful. Over here is the air filter and the currently installed carbon filters, and also the slot for the servo, if you manage to find one, of course. Now let's look at the catalysts, which are power producing parts. As you can see, the basic tier 1 increases the power output by the whopping 50%. The better the part, the higher the bonus. And parts can range from tier 1, which are fairly common, all the way up to tier 4, which provides really tremendous bonuses to any system they are inserted in. Alright, so now that we've pretty much covered everything we have. Oh, yes, almost forgot. Alright, so these cryopods are essentially empty and they can be used in two ways. You can set your own spawn point. Gonna have to get this little confirmation box. So let's say that I want to change my spawn point. From this point on, I will always spawn inside of this cryo chamber in case anything happens to my character. The other option, which you have, of course, is to invite a friend over, which simply means that you can select one of your friends from your friend list and then add them over there. They will receive the invite and will be able to join you immediately within your base. Also note that assigning yourself to one specific cryopod will free the other one up. So the total number of cryopods you have available within your base is 3. Alright, looks like we're all set, I hope. Still no power, damn it. Alright, time to go outside. Okay, so as you may notice over here, these corridors that lead to the outside, that connect to the vacuum of space, are always placed in zero gravity conditions, simply to allow you a much easier transition into space. And one thing to note over here is that this is not an airlock. Now, this is simply a connecting corridor which is used to connect two different modules. What's going to happen is you can notice that the doors do not open automatically when I get close to it. Instead, we have this pressure hazard icon over here. What this means is that if I was to open the door manually, it's dark, so it's a little difficult to see, so let me turn on the flashlight. Alright, so you can see the door control over here, and you have this manual override lever. Whenever you see this, the only way to open the door is by pulling one of these. Now, I'm going to do something really stupid, and then you can not do it later. So I'm just going to open this. And of course, this is what's going to happen. Alright, so I just got ejected from the base, but at least we have a lovely sunrise over back here. And as you can see, I can't really move because I turned off my jetpack. And if left like this, I will simply continue to drift because there's nothing really to slow me down. Fortunately, we do have a jetpack, so I'm going to bring it on, lock onto the outpost. Alright. And start thrusting towards it. Now you may see at the lower part of my screen the distance, directional speed, and lateral speed. So notice how the directional speed changes as I thrust, and it continues to increase. Alright. Now this is because in space all motion is perpetual. There is actually no way for you to stop your motion in any way. What you can do is come to a relative stop relative to a certain object. So in this case, we have chosen our outpost as our target. So we will come to a stop relative to that outpost because at any given moment we are continuously moving on our orbit around the planet and along with it around the sun itself. Alright, so now we have a lovely view of our outpost on the outside, and let me just show you something real quick over there. Yes, now here we have access to our solar panels and of course the catalyst which goes inside, which is already installed and is improving our power output. Also took some damage from that pass through a debris field, so we're gonna do a repair on that real quick. And now let's cover the basics of a tutorial on how to effectively move when you're inside in the vacuum of space. Now I'm going to step away from the outpost a little bit, and then I'm going to try and bring myself to a relative stop. Alright. Alright, close enough. So right now I'm standing relatively still. You can still see that I have some lateral speed. Alright, so what this means is directional speed indicates my approach directly towards a target. So you can see that I'm right now approaching at about 3 meters per second. Now we'll start moving away from it at 2 meters per second. Now, one thing to note when moving in space is that since there is nothing to slow you down, every time you hit a key, a directional key, your jetpack is going to start firing and continuously accelerate. What this means is that if I was, say, to start thrusting backwards, let's go, and thrust for a while, I will need to thrust forward the same amount of time in order to come to a full stop. The other mistake that some people often make is that they completely disregard their lateral speed while trying to approach an object. So I'm drifting at a lateral or offset speed of about 5 meters per second compared to the outpost. And see what happens if I try to approach it by just looking at it. So I'm centered at it and I'm accelerating towards it and accelerating. Okay, I'm getting close, right? Nope, wait. And this is what normally happens, unless you work on negating that offset of yours. Now this is a simple thing because you're constantly moving diagonally from the outpost. Alright, so let's come to a stop and see what we need to do to fix this little problem. Alright, so now moving diagonally towards the outpost, however I'm going to miss it. So the easiest way to do this is to face your target completely, hold shift to stabilize any rotation you may have had, and then observe your lateral speed indicator. And thrust in the opposite direction in order to negate your lateral speed completely. Now once it's close to, say, 0.2, etc., it is pretty much safe for you to start moving towards the outpost. When you have a target selected, that's another thing. Over up in the upper part of the screen, you can see the contact list, and you can cycle it by hitting the arrow keys up and down. When you have a target selected, you've noticed that all these little particles that show up. Now, these particles are there to assist you in discerning your motion. So they will change their course based on your relative approach angle towards the outpost. So you can use them to easily gauge if you're moving to the left, the right, up, down, etc. Alright, so now that we have covered that one, let's go over the directional radar. Okay, so directional radar, let's go select a derelict, for example. Now you may notice that the line downstairs has a little icon. Alright, so let's turn around to face it. Right. Now we're looking directly at the derelict. If I'm to turn around, you can notice that the indicator moves. Also, if I start looking up, it changes into an arrow to let me know that it's below me. And that is pretty much it as far as motion goes. Also, bear in mind that for every second that you spend in space, you are consuming oxygen and your jetpack fuel. Oh, also you can do this, but I don't recommend it. Not a very good way to conserve oxygen. Alright, so let's approach the derelict. Now, the derelicts are basically remains of other modules, and they're pretty much good for nothing. Practically space garbage, with one exception. There's often valuable stuff, resources, tools, equipment. They're often left inside. So let's enter this one. You can hold shift while you are approaching an object to quickly grab onto it. Just try not to move too fast, or you'll just hit it. Alright, let's see. So we got some ammo packs. Ammo clips, sorry. Alright. We got our 3 ammo clips. We got a refined resource canister. Alright, great. Oh, and we have a resource injector. Alright, let me see if we can find something else. Oh, excellent. We have one small canister. These are going to come in handy. Alright. Moving in 0G will take some time to get used to, so don't give up, just keep on practicing. Once you learn it, it becomes basically second nature. Alright, so now that we have pretty much stripped this derelict clean of any viable resources, what we're going to do now is, as I mentioned, we are currently running a bit, well, not low, we're about at half, so that's kind of good, but it won't hurt to actually refill our oxygen and fuel supply. And this is what these little hand canisters are for. So just left click them, and we've refilled our jetpack and our oxygen supply within the suit. Alright, so the module that I'm looking at over here is actually an airlock. So what we need to do now is dock this airlock module over to our outpost. What this is going to do is it's going to allow us to leave and enter our station without venting that small corridor as we had to do before. So in order to actually start the docking procedure, you need to lift off this little panel over there and access the docking control. Now, the docking screen is also broken into a few sections. Over in the left side, you have our current module along with its fuel level at the bottom and its available docking ports. So as you can see, the Airlock has an Airlock docking port, and by using the R key, you can shift between available docking ports and their cameras. We also have access to a standard docking port. When we look at the outpost over on the right, where we can see a small contact list, it can also be cycled by using arrow keys. Right, so let's select our outposts. The outpost, now you can see the target module available ports only has a single standard docking port available because crew quarters module is docked to the other one. And finally, over at the top right, you can see the circular radar, which is going to help you find your target a little bit easier. All right, so let's dock our airlock to the outpost. As a rule of thumb, you can use this standard docking port to standard docking port, airlock docking port to airlock docking port, and of course, grappler from a ship can be docked to absolutely any port because that is how the ship can actually tow modules. Alright, so we're also perfectly aligned, but I'm going to kind of shift that up a little just to make this a little bit interesting. Alright, so now what we have here is we need to bring this airlock close enough for the auto docking procedure to kick in. Now, you may have noticed that we have these lines protruding from the central reticle. Now, these are here to assist you in judging your relative motion, and they show you your vertical and horizontal offset. If we were to rotate a little, you will also see the red circle start to fill up, indicating the combined angle that we have towards our target. So, as you can see, if I move it just slight, it is going to turn green. Normally, when these values are in green, you are safe for docking. So, first thing that you want to do is slow down and come to a relative stop. You can do that by negating the lines that protrude from the center reticle, and then come to a relative stop towards an object. You can see the distance and directional speed down there. Alright, so then you need to align yourself properly towards the airlock. So we're slightly misaligned right now, so I'm gonna go a little bit down. Just make sure to not use big motions, just light taps, and you should not overshoot your target. Now once you're aligned close to this, start approaching your selected docking port, and the auto docking sequence should kick in once we get close to about 2.5 meters. And there we go. There is also a certain margin for error when trying to dock. You do not have to be dead on center or too precise. There is a slight margin for error which will allow you to dock even if you're slightly misaligned. Alright, so now that we have our airlock docked, we can actually go inside, and since we actually have some power, we can finally refine those resources and refuel our tools. Alright. So we can approach to the airlock, access the panel, and start depressurizing. What this is going to do, it's going to remove the air from the airlock and store it inside a special tank, which can then be used to repressurize. Basically, the airlocks allow you to enter or leave your base without wasting any of the precious atmosphere. Also, equalizing the pressure is one of the few ways to avoid decompressing yourself into space, as you have seen me do when I was leaving the station for the first time. Alright, let's get in. You can also open the doors using the button, or you can use the commands over here. Notice that we cannot use any of these. We have to close the doors first. Now, of course, I will show you something. Let me open these doors. Now, if I click to open the inner doors, which are under pressure, I'm going to get this warning screen. This is what actually lets you override the airlock in case you're in a hurry and you do not want to wait for it to finish the full cycle. You can use the override, but it will vent the atmosphere. And it also looks like the airlock took some damage. We're gonna have to do some repair works as soon as we refuel our welding tool. Okay, you can notice that in the lower portion of my screen, the gauge has gone from red to white, indicating that I can now lift up my visor. And since we also have power in the airlock, I can also stop wasting power in the flashlight. We also have another container over here, which we can use to refuel our jetpack if we so choose. Let's bring it with them. It's always useful to have a few more. And I'm just going to go real quick over these. You already know these lockers. They contain your suit, your jetpack, and your helmet. Below them, you can find the personal defense locker, which can hold up to 2 pistols, along with ammo for them. And this one, which has space for 3 rifles and ammo for them. Alright, let me see. And we're entering a debris field again. Okay. We really need to move our base. Alright. Also, you do not want to do this. If there is a pressure hazard and you manually open the doors, you can expect that the force of air is going to push you backwards and probably onto your back. Alright, so let's power up our modules. Let's see, how's the capacitor working? Okay, capacitor is full, so I believe we can continue refining. Let me see, since we're not in darkness anymore, I can safely show you guys the debris field. But that was a hit, actually. We just took a hit. Yes, this is a debris, what a debris field looks like. Now, we're safely inside our module, but if we're on the outside, let's say that you find yourself outside in this debris storm, what you can actually do is hide behind a module, and that will prevent your character from taking damage. Keep in mind, however, that modules and equipment will take damage for as long as they're in the debris field. Now this is a rather mild one, but if we stay in here, our gear is going to continue suffering damage, as you can see here. Alright, so let's go to the outpost. Alright, the refinery is almost finished. We're gonna wait for that. And then we're going to pick up our tools and finally refuel them so we can finally go aboard the ship and begin preparations on moving our starting base out of the debris field. Now this should definitely be our first priority, as staying in the debris field is not a very good scenario. Alright, so I'm going to use this time to quickly go over one thing. As you remember, we had one set of suit over in the crew quarters module, and over here you have 2 additional suits. Now, that's enough for 3 people. However, let's say that we go outside and we suffer an accident, we lose our ship, we lose our characters. So what's going to happen, we're all going to respawn in our respective cryopods, and there will be no suits. Now, over here, you have these 2 options. One is to activate a distress call, which is essentially going to broadcast your position to everyone else within the Hellion system. Now, this can be both good and bad. You may find a kind soul who's going to come in and help you. On occasion, you may encounter a pirate who is just going to come here and loot you, possibly killing you in the process. Again. Now, the other option is, let me show you that, is called Call Rescue Ship. Now, what this will do is, if we click it, you can see that the system tells that the ship is already in range. Now, if you had lost your ship you can use this to call for a new one, and it will arrive in approximately 10 minutes. However, keep in mind that you should always keep at least one suit inside your outpost, just in case you have to call for a rescue ship, because it will allow you to actually leave your base and reach the ship. Alright, the resources should be refined by now. Yes, the refinery is finished. As you see, we have some oxygen, some extra hydrogen, and some more deuterium. Let's unload these and start refueling our equipment. Alright, first it's going to be the welding tool. Now let's take some hydrogen, fill it up. Alright, then we're going to take our fire extinguisher. Didn't really have too much chances to use, fortunately. And we're going to fill that one up. And finally, let's refuel our jetpack. Let's add some oxygen and a bit more RCS fuel or nitro. And now we need to recharge the power in it. So this is the power recharge station. So just leave your jetpack on for a couple of seconds and it should fully charge. Since we're out of the debris field, we should definitely use this opportunity to leave. Alright, another thing that I'm going to show you real soon is the air filter. So as you can see over here, the air filter is currently offline. It is not doing anything. That is because the air quality needs to drop below 90% for the air filter to activate, when it will start working and replenish it fully to 100%. So, also, you can check the fuel levels of your jetpack from over here, using that little display on the back of it. Alright, we're going to turn on our air generator, and as you can see, it now shows certain air output and is consuming a lot of resources. So to avoid wasting some, let's throw in the resource injector, which is going to cut our resource consumption in half, as you can see. And what this is going to do, it's going to fully load the airlock, and as you can see, we can now finally pass through the doors as the pressure had been raised to 1 bar. Notice that all doors will automatically open if the pressure allows it. In case there is a pressure difference, you will have to do a manual override. Alright, so let's see how we're doing. Air quality had just dropped to 89%, so let's leave the air generator online for a bit more to actually restore pressure. You can also check, as I've mentioned, over here to see if there is anything left which needs to be fully pressurized. Right, we can turn the air generator offline, and now we're going to activate the air filter. And the air filter is going to start replenishing the air quality within our base. Notice that different types of air filters, because you have several different modules, have more powerful systems. So using the air filter in the starting outposts will not be as effective, not nearly as effective, as using the air filter within the ship or a fully dedicated life support module. Alright, let's see what we get. We got some hydrogen, some oxygen, some nitrogen. Let's transfer some more deuterium because we're going to the ship. Who knows if we're going to need some fuel. As you can see, the air filter started replenishing the air quality, but it's, as I said, it is working relatively slow. Alright, so let's go on the outside. It's time to get to our ship and start moving our base. Alright, once in the airlock, we're going to close the inner doors and start depressurizing. This is definitely something you do not want to do. Now, if some of you remember, I had left my jetpack charging, and I forgot to check if I had it on with me. Always check if you have your jetpack with you. So I took some damage, and as you can see that my screen is slightly desaturated at the moment, as there is no proper health indicator for you to tell, there's no health bar to tell you whether your character is hurt or not, but your screen will slowly turn gray as your character takes damage. So let's use the stim pack to heal ourselves, and the colors are back. It does take some time, you know, for it to restore your health to the full, but at least our jetpack is charged, so that's a good thing, right? Alright. Now that we also have our welding tool refueled, let's use it to repair some of the damage that we have suffered. Alright. And now let's get out. Alright. Now there's a ship. Well, not ours yet, but the only one we have nearby. Now let's just target it, so... Alright. As you can see, I'm no longer trusting. As we've explained a bit earlier, there is absolutely no need for you to waste additional resources, additional fuel. Just provide a certain amount of trust that you feel comfortable with, and then let the inertia do the rest. Alright, so let's quickly go over the ship and see if there is any external damage that we can fix while we're on the outside. Okay. Seems we took some damage over here. And the solar panels seem fine. And you can also see, I set a place for a catalyst over there. And now we have 2 spare catalysts, but I'm saving those for the reactor. Check below. See if there's any additional damage that the ship might have taken. Looks like the warp drive looks okay. Sure about the generator. Looks like the ship is actually in pretty good working conditions, considering when to... of course there had to be at least one problem. Alright, let's fix it up. Now I'm going to talk a little bit while we wait for the airlock to cycle. There's several types of hazards that you can encounter based on the amount of damage and location of damage that you take. So the external damage is mostly going to cause hull breach and damage the external systems. For example, if we are in a debris storm, any external points like the solar panels or potential spots where a hull breach can occur are going to take damage, and they're going to be damaged first. The hull breach will of course going to waste your resources by venting them into space. There's also a chance that a system will malfunction and start a fire, that you will first have to put out before you can actually repair it. And finally, systems can be completely outright destroyed by when they take damage, and then you will need to repair them to full. And of course, if you had any parts, they also have a chance to be destroyed when the system fails. So maintaining your systems in working order and keeping your ship in good condition is imperative to survival. There's also debris fields are currently one of the main sources of damage, as I will show you a bit later. The debris fields are in general located around moons, planets, etc. And other modules, derelicts, etc. that you can actually loot for items can frequently pass through these debris fields. So while exploring, you need to be careful of these. And if you plan to go into one on purpose, let's say there's this module that you really like, that you really want to get for yourself, like say a fully working cargo bay or a full power supply unit, make sure that your ship is topped off and that you have enough resources to repair it. The other source of damage is a slow degradation process that is affecting all of the equipment in Hellion. This is a very slow process. You would really have to neglect your base and systems for many long weeks before they take enough damage to for that damage to actually be fatal. Now we don't have any power. I'd actually want to leave the flashlight on. Alright, so let's go over to the power supply system. Now as you can see, over to the left we now have our ship, and the ship is equipped with a fusion reactor. So let's fire the reactor up, let's fire our solar panels, and start filling the capacitor of our ship. And now we can turn the lights off. Alright, so let's check it out. As you can see, the ship is also equipped with a life support, but we're going to switch it off for now because as far as I can tell our conditions are perfectly fine. This is where the systems for the life support are located. Power supply, as you can tell, is over here, and this is where I'm going to start using these parts. So over here, as you can see, every system has indication for its parts. So as you can see, our power supply, our reactor, is currently producing 750 power, which is not that much for a fusion reactor, I guess you would agree. But as I said, without parts, they're considered barely operational. So let's put in the two catalysts that we found, and voila. Now we have a whopping 1.5k output, which is going to fill our capacitor in no time. Also, over here you can check all of the systems of the ship. So always look for good and better parts. Tier 1 parts are going to provide you some basic bonuses, which are still very substantial, while Tier 4 parts are basically going to transform any system they're attached to into a true powerhouse. Alright, so we also have a rifle over here. Let's arm ourselves. After all, we're not alone out there, and who knows if they're going to be friendly. You have a spare set of a suit over here, which, if you remember what I said, is a very good idea to leave at your base, just in case something happens. Alright, there's all these lockers over here. This one's for grenades, this one's for ammo, and this one is for pistols and their ammo. Where did I okay, there we go. Alright, so let's go and check the ship out completely. Okay, over here is a panel that too many people overlook. This is the security interface for the ship, and as you can see, the ship is currently unclaimed. So we're going to click claim and set ownership. Once you have done that, you will be authorized as the commanding officer over here, and then you can change the ship name. So let's change it. Alright, name is changed, and of course you can change your ship's logo or an emblem. You can choose between any of the emblems that are offered different flags, of course. Some lore friendly, some community sent, of course. And I'm going to pick a little space helmet. Alright, now let's check the status. Oh, that was a mistake. Okay, let's check the status of our warp drive. Let's check the parts as well while we're at it. Okay, we seem to have a spare warp cell. And unfortunately nothing else. Well, that's not much to go on, but it'll have to work. Also keep in mind that this is, as I said, your warp drive system. Your warp cells are your fuel for the warp drive system. And over here is where you can slot the singularity cell detonator, which is essentially the central piece of your warp drive system. Now, at the moment, we will only have access to the lowest warp, warp 1. However, once we found a different part, found a better singularity cylinder, we will be able to unlock better and faster warps. So let's go over the pilot panel and cover the piloting interface. Right, so let's see, what we have here is we have our piloting panel that you can interact to go into piloting mode. Controls are pretty much similar to character that is outside in space in EVA, or to the docking interface. You can see the little red lines protruding out from the central HUD, which indicate your lateral velocity, vertical and horizontal. And of course you have your directional speed indicator. Right below you have the distance, then below it you have this little bar that we're going to go over in a few seconds, and of course you have your directional speed. To the left you have the status of your equipment. So over here we have the engines, which are currently offline. We have the RCS system, which is good to go. We have the FTL drive or warp drive, which is also offline, and the ship is at 90% hull. Fuel levels for the engine and RCS are also okay. And then over to the right we have our contact list. So let's boot up the FTL. Alright, so the first things first, you have the contact list to the right, which you can cycle by using the arrow keys. Not much different from the one on your helmet. You also can tap the R key to change the radar range. Notice that I've changed it from 100 to 1000. And now that I'm approaching, you can see that the ETA bar changes. What this means is that as long as the speed bar indicated by that little blue thing is close, I'm going to approach my target safely. You can use it basically to assist you when approaching. Also, once you come close enough to your target, say within 150 meters, and you reduce your speed to about 2 meters per second, combined, directional and lateral, you can tap M to match yourself to the object. Alright, now that we're matched, I'm just gonna go down into the cargo hold and check we actually took some damage, because I'm pretty certain we did. Oh. Oh, yeah, we definitely took some damage. So this is what I was talking about. This is a fire hazard. Now, if we are to approach to that one, don't do this at home, we're going to start taking damage. Screen is also going to go flashing red. And another thing to note about fires, of course here, and the air quality is dropping rapidly. Fires will rapidly deplete the air quality from the room. So point the fire extinguisher over there and put it off. Alright. Now once the fire is out, you can safely approach with your welding tool and repair the damage. The more damage you took, the longer it's going to take to repair. You can see here. Alright. We seem to be okay for now. Now let's see if we are lucky and have a part or two over here that we can maybe use. Always stay on the lookout for better parts. not like this time. Alright, so as you can see here, there is also an airlock panel over here. Cargo hold of the ship can be opened manually over here to lower these doors, and can be used to quickly enter and exit the ship. As you can see, there is a lot of storage space over here. However, keep in mind that if you plan to use it as an airlock, it's going to take a very long time for the entire cargo hold to depressurize, and if you vent it, it's going to take a lot of resources to fully pressurize it. But in case you do decide to depressurize it fully and use it to exit the ship rather than an airlock, the elevator also functions as an airlock in case the cargo bay is depressurized. Alright, so we're gonna cover the drill and the mining equipment in a second. Now, as you can see, there is no cargo interface on the ship. Instead, ship is equipped with a refueling station, which is going to accept any any refined resource canisters. So let's just check. We have 34 units of deuterium, some hydrogen, and a bit of oxygen. So just slot it in. It's going to get drained, and it's going to transfer whatever was inside a canister into the ship. If you want to manually refuel the ship, you will need to dock it over to your outpost, and once you've done that, you will be able to transfer resources from the cargo screen directly between cargoes. And it looks like we're in a debris field again. We really need to move. All right. We also have an additional welding tool. I recommend leaving this one somewhere in the cargo hold just in case you need it. So keep one in the cargo. You can leave the other one in your base. And we're gonna go over the mining. This is your mining drill that you can use to mine asteroids when you come across them. In order to equip a drill in full, you will need a battery and a raw container. So equip the drill, point it towards the battery, pick it up, and you can do the same thing with the resource canister. This is not maybe the best choice because it's half full, but what can you do? But for now, we're going to leave it over here, and we're definitely going to leave and go outside to finally start preparations to move our base. Now, there is a little thing about moving the base. Now, I'm not too happy about having to leave in the middle of a debris field, but I'm getting sick and tired of it. Just in case we encounter some problems, as I said, you're not alone out there. Over here is your locking mechanism for the door. If you're unauthorized, you will not be able to open from the outside. However, if you are authorized as a captain or any member of the crew, you can safely pass through locked doors. The same is true for the airlock as well, so it can also be locked. Alright, let's go outside. Hopefully the debris field's gonna be gone by the time the airlock finishes cycling. It's a good thing we're out of the debris field. Looks like we're on a very, very steep orbit towards it, so we don't spend more than maybe a minute within, which is kind of fortunate. Alright, time to go outside. Of course, we're going to use our airlock to go inside. Now, a trick to moving your base is that since the ship is only equipped to handle a single module at a time, we will be required to first detach the modules that we've added to our station, split them into smaller sections before we can actually move them to a different location. And said the ship can only tow a single module at a time. So, also in case you're wondering, here are the parts for the RCS system. And there's seams that are module also took some added damage over here, so let's do a quick fix over there as well. Now, as I mentioned, hazards can be both internal and external. So when you're outside, it does not hurt to actually check for. Does that hurt to actually check if your base is damaged, if you took any hits recently, especially if you know you've passed to a debris field. Alright. Okay, we're going to close the doors, start the pressurization process. Since we're in the shadow again, it does seem that we've run out of power. And this problem, for example, can be easily handled if you say find a fully working power supply module. Well, fully working is a bit of a stretch. It's probably going to be damaged, but once restored, to full functionality and upgraded with proper parts, it's going to go a long way. Just a slight hit over there. There we are. Alright, very good. Looks like we didn't take as much damage as I thought. Alright. Now, to start detaching our base, I recommend that you start with the crew quarter module, the way that I'm going to do it. So let's close the doors. Now, in order to safely detach two modules, there are two docking levers, one on each end of the docking door. So pull one lever, make sure that this door is closed to avoid venting any precious atmosphere. Once the door is closed, use the lever to undock. And as you can see, our crew quarters module is drifting away at the moment. Alright, so the second thing to do is going to be to detach the airlock. However, I do recommend you do that from the airlock, so you can use it to cycle the air and minimize, well, actually eliminate any loss of atmosphere during this process. Alright. And unfortunately, I wasn't looking. It would appear that we've collided with our own ship that was a little too close. Fortunately, we did not take any major damage. Another thing to be mindful of. Alright, so let's close the doors, pressurize. Bring the visor down to avoid any problems. This is why I said these come in very handy. And in case you're wondering, these can also be easily refueled at the cargo panel. And they actually represent the way for you to stay outside in EVA for longer periods of time, especially if you're exploring or conducting certain repairs, etc. Alright, where's that ship of ours? Guess we did not collide with our ship. Or maybe we did. I'm not entirely sure. Alright, so before that next debris storm hits, let's go back inside the ship. Alright, let's go inside. We'll conduct repairs later. Also keep in mind that this little point here can be used to hack a locked door in case you're trying to be a less reputable Hellion survivor, but it will require you to first find a hacking tool. These are of course removed after use, so alright, So we're back inside, and alright, so finally we get to start the moving process. Alright, so this case we're going to definitely start with the outpost over there, because it's probably the most valuable module that we have in our arsenal. Although the angle is pretty bad, so I'm gonna have to move downstairs a little bit below it, and a little to the... Alright. Okay. Alright, so now we're going to go over here. We have navigation and docking. Docking is what we're looking for. It's going to show us the rear grappling port of our ship. Now, you can see that we have an airlock docking port selected, so this would actually allow us to dock to the airlock's docking port. But since we want to grapple the outpost, we're going to switch over to the grappler. Alright, where's the outpost? Where's the outpost? Come on. Okay, there we go. Now the best way to do docking, and I can't stress this enough, is to actually use shift to stabilize your rotation, and first get your ship into a desired position, or a module in this case. With ship it's a little easier because you can match your speed before you actually start the docking procedure. Also, if you select docking ports, the one that you have selected will be highlighted, of course. Right now let's move upstairs, let's move a little bit closer. Let's also lift up because we're approaching at a very bad angle here. Alright, much better, thank you. We're still at a very bad angle. Let's go float up a little bit. Alright, slow down. Stabilize. Alright, looks like we're good. Okay. And we're docked. Alright, now that we have our outposts with our cryopod safely grappled by our ship, we're gonna go over into the navigation screen, or the nav map, for the first time. And the nav map is going to show us our current location over here. As you see, this is one of my old ships from when I was trying to record a video for the first time, so I ran into certain problems, so we had to try again. Alright, so over here, this is the nav map, and we're gonna cover Tills Now Better is the planet that we're orbiting right now. These dust clouds that you see around it are, you've probably guessed it by now, but these are the debris fields. Now, the larger the planet, the more deadlier the debris fields usually are, so although it's the ones around Burner or others are also pretty powerful. You can also guess the intensity of a debris field. You can judge its radius standardly, but the density is going to change based on its danger. How to say, there are two sources of damage within the debris field, and but we'll worry about those later. First one is, as you've seen, the small shrapnel-like objects which are flying at high speeds. However, our ship is usually perfectly capable of shrugging off most of the damage, as the armor on both ships and modules is rather thick. However, on occasion you may get hit by a full runaway derelict, and that is going to hurt. Alright, so let's go over the interface. Now you can use your right mouse button to click and hold to actually rotate the camera. You can pan by using the left mouse button. Clicking an object is going to zoom you in, of course. You can immediately zoom out by clicking either zoom out or slowly zooming out with your mouse wheel. Over to the left, we have the scan option, which I'm going to activate right now. Scanning is how you actually find distant objects in space. And we're going to check if there's anything in the immediate vicinity. And guess what? There is. So all of these are potential points of interest that we can approach. So you can see that here there's another outpost, another ship, and another derelict. Over here is just a derelict and an outpost. Over here is the airlock module, and also a few other modules that we don't see. So they're showing as a question mark. This would be a distress call. As you can see, these are all the new distress calls that are going to show you exactly the location. So this would be this one. Then we also have this one. What the? We have a ship probably leaving the Hellion system, but it's somehow still transmitting a distress signal. That's not very encouraging. Then we also seem to have a command module named Yamato over there in a very wide orbit around Broken Marble. But let's go back to our ship. So you can use this to zoom out. It will always zoom one level up. So if you were looking at a moon, it will zoom over to a planet. If you zoom out even further, it's going to show you the map of the entire system. As you can see, we are over here. There are Erdil, Atnar, Heret, and Nemesis planets towards the center of the system. We also have Askatar, and we have Ea. Note that all of these are actually separated into different zones, which I'm going to cover real quick right now. So Better would be one of the starting zones, which is going to provide some of the basic supplies, some tier 1 parts, etc. that you can use. Then we have Burner over here, which oddly enough is a civilian zone. So you will find mostly gear that belongs in the civilian sector, along with, let's say, life support parts, etc. Then on the other hand, you have the Broken Marble, which is a former military post, and will mostly contain items related to ships and military. So we're talking about engine parts, added ship fuel, weapons, etc. And finally, we have the Everest, which is was used to be a major industrial center and will mostly contain industry related gear. So we're talking about repair tools, we're talking about mining equipment, we're talking about better suits, etc. In terms of different modules and various things that you can add, each one of these zones has its own pool of modules that can spawn anywhere around them. Some of them will be inside of the brief field, some will be just passing through. So explore carefully. And also finally, we're going to go over these 2 points. These are the permanent stations, so to speak, that you can also visit for some added fuel, some maybe warp cells, and some added gear if you're looking to get any. Over here we have the asteroids, which can of course be mined for resources. And finally, as I've mentioned, we have various distress calls. Now, the second option over here is authorized vessels, which is going to actually show you all ships where you have been authorized. So over here we have a very innovative name for a ship called Zero Gravity Boat that I was authorized at, but have unfortunately met my untimely demise. And we also have the sleeper service, which is my current vessel over here. So in case, let's say you were exploring, you ran into a problem, you die, you can use this list to find a ship you were last on and then use the rescue ship that comes over to actually find it. Finally, you have the home station, which is always going to home in on the place which has your cryopod. And of course, a ship which is going to always zoom towards your current ship. Alright, so time to finally move. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to add a custom orbit around Betir. This is at least something that I like to do. The others prefer different methods, of course. So we're going to do is adjust it. We can also use these to change various parameters and values. Let's move this a little bit closer. I do not want to get pulled by burner's gravity, because if you're standing too close, that can actually happen. All right, and we are now on a slightly safer orbit, which is definitely taking us away from the debris field. Now, let's move the point where we want to be over here and order a warp maneuver by clicking warp 2. Now, this is going to open you the warp or FTL maneuver interface. So what you will need to do is first select the fuel cells that you want to use. So in this case, let's waste the worst one first. And then you will need to adjust your start and arrival time. So time to activation, I'm going to zoom on it. You can just click on this little diamond over here and it's going to show. You can also drag and move these along your orbit. So let's say the time is now 48 seconds. What this means is, as you can see here, my ship is constantly moving, while this is a stationary point on my orbit. In exactly 36 seconds, my ship is going to arrive here, and then I will be able to initiate my jump. It will take certain time to arrive to the locations which I've set. In this case, I've set the value too low, and the warp 1 is simply not fast enough to get me there in time, in the desired amount of time. So I'm going to readjust this and set the travel time to 3 minutes. Once you have your maneuver set, you need to use that little M, the corner of the screen, you've seen it, to point you towards the proper direction. Alright, in this case, we are set, and then you need to wait until the timer hits the 5 seconds mark. Once that, just press J to activate your warp drive maneuver. Sit back and relax in the blinding warp effect that is going to take you out of the debris field. So let's recap what we've done. So far, we've completed the entire starting scene. We have repaired our outpost, repaired our ship, salvaged some parts, upgraded a few systems, and of course, we have finally moved our base out of the debris field. Now, as you remember, we did leave 2 modules down there, 2 very useful modules, the crew quarters module and the airlock. So the next thing we will want to do is to go back over there, go back into the debris field probably, and collect our airlock and collect our crew quarters. But we will probably leave that for the other video. For now, well, the last thing I want to show you is how to set up, how to warp to other objects, which is pretty simple, but we'll have to wait until the warp maneuver finishes. Also, you are not locked into your chair while the warp is ongoing. And I keep forgetting to lift up my visors, so I'm pretty wasteful when it comes to resources. Also, a few things about the reactor itself. The reactor currently consumes 8 units of deuterium per hour, considering that we do not have a single resource injector installed. The ship's capacitor also features a core containment field, which can be inserted to greatly improve maximum storage of your capacitor. And, of course, we have the solar panels. As I've mentioned, the list of all power supply units is on the left, all consumers on the right. Now, one thing that you would definitely want to do when you plan to, say, log out or log off is go to your cryopod and log out. But first, you should always watch to shut down your power reactor, because it is going to work constantly, even once the capacitor is fully loaded. So to conserve some fuel, shut it down. In this instance, we are actually good because we are producing enough power from the outpost and with the ship to actually function properly without. Alright, so what I'm gonna do right now is, let me see if I have anything else that needs to be done. We've shut down our supply. Alright, that's good. Yes. Now that we've brought our base, we need to undock it from our ship. We're going to do so by pulling this little lever. Only one is enough. And our outpost is undocked from our ship. Now we're just going to use our ship, use the match option. And that's it. We have successfully transferred our base into a much higher orbit around Betir and safely escaped from the debris field in the starting zone. One last thing which I will cover now is the use of engine. Now engines are pretty powerful, but that is for that reason that they rarely see any use. When you're crossing vast distances between moons and planets, warp drive is simply superior to engines as it provides near instantaneous travel, where engines are going to take a long time to actually reach their full power. When the engines are online, they are going to completely replace your directional thrust of the RCS. So your W and S keys are actually going to increase or decrease engine thrusts. Or, in this case, when I press S, we're going to go in reverse. And as you can see, they're very powerful. So be very careful when you use them. They are very good in case you need to abort a warp drive maneuver and you have very little time, you don't have enough time to plot a new warp jump, so you just fire off the engines to avoid planetary collision. You can also use them to approach targets over great distances, because on occasion your warp drive may actually take you way off your target, sometimes up to like 300 or 400 kilometers away. So this is where the engines come into play. However, when you're close by to your target, always turn them off by tapping the enter key. They're going to go into cooldown and then offline. It's going to take some time for them to be useful again. And use the RCS to maneuver. Alright, so finally we're going to go back to our lost ship. Alright, so one thing I forgot to mention is how warp drive consumes power. Now, over here, you can see your capacitor bar and the power consumption. The warp 1 is going to consume 150,000 stored power in a single go when you initiate the warp drive, when you activate the jump. So the better the warp, more power it's going to consume, and the highest warp in the game is going to require you to actually upgrade your capacitor on board the ship so you can actually execute the jump. And now let's just execute this one. Alright, let's adjust our start time. And now as you can see, at the moment, since if you remember correctly, we did shut down our reactor. And we now have insufficient power. Here is the mark which we need to fill up. So in order to finally execute this jump, I will have to go back to our reactor and put it on. This is also going to limit the speed at which you can conduct warp maneuvers. So let's power up ship, power up the reactor, wait a bit for it to fully charge. Alright, we're good. Alright. This time got completely jumbled up because we missed our launch window basically. Let's bring it to something more manageable. And let's see. Too low. Alright, very good. Now, as you can see, we are slightly over this limit. So let's initialize. As before, we'll need to align our ship properly to execute the maneuver. Also, when piloting, use shift to stabilize your ship's rotation to be on target and execute. And this is going to be everything for today's video. We're gonna continue this series going forward, and the other parts of this Let's Play are going to contain a little less tutorial once we've covered all the basics and a little bit more content. So stay tuned for the next video, and of course, as always, lie safe.